Good evening. This is James Exum coming to you from my studio in South Austin, Texas. This is Thursday, August the 13th at approximately 9:45 p.m. And this evening I have a new presentation for you, a new discourse being uploaded to the video and being recorded at this moment. I've entitled this one, The Shadow. The Shadow is not the old movie cinema program from the 40s and 50s, or the TV program, or even a movie that was made later on in the 70s, maybe early 80s. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what Dr. Carl Jung called the shadow, which I'm paraphrasing here, basically described as the receptacle, the place within your subconscious where all unwanted thoughts and memories and such are stored. There can be positive things stored there also, like little treasures that have been suppressed in childhood or maybe in later life. One of those might be, say, courage, or being able to speak publicly, but somewhere along the way you were taught that that's not proper, or you learned that being quiet about that subject or not exhibiting that subject served you in a social order better than displaying it. Well, again, it's called The Shadow, and again, my narrator on my word tool on my computer, put out by Microsoft, my Word program, and its narrator will read it for you. My voice gets weaker with time because of my Parkinsonian-like disease, and when I feel the strength to do it, I will read them personally. But in this case, I believe this one's about 6 pages, so I'll let the narrator read it for you. And here we go. The Shadow.
The Shadow. From Suppression to Integration. James H. Exum / Yogi Sakshi. Austin, Texas. Copyrighted August 13th, 2026. All rights reserved. Meeting the shadow is not failure. It is part of growth. When you stop running from what is inside you, you begin to understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, you can begin to heal, change, and live with greater peace. Sakshi. Let us begin with something simple. Every person has parts of themselves they have pushed away. Carl Jung called this hidden side of the personality the shadow, the rejected or unseen part of the personality. It can include feelings, memories, desires, fears, and even strengths we were taught not to show. The shadow is not some evil thing inside us. It is the part of us we have not yet understood. Suppression begins when we decide, I cannot feel this, or I cannot show this. A child may learn that anger is not allowed. Grief may be ignored. Fear may be hidden. Over time, these feelings do not disappear. They get pushed down, and we start to live as if only certain parts of us are acceptable. Jung also spoke about the persona, the social mask or role presented to the world. The persona is the face we show the world. It is the role we play so we can fit into family, work, culture, and society. The persona is useful, but it becomes a problem when we think it is all we are. If we only live through the mask, the parts that do not fit the mask get pushed into the shadow. But what we push down will usually come back in other ways. Jung called one of these ways projection, seeing one's own hidden material in another person. Projection happens when we see in another person something we have not accepted in ourselves. We may judge them, dislike them, or react strongly to them because they are touching something hidden in us. The shadow often speaks through our strongest reactions. Trying to be only good can create pressure. We may smile on the outside while feeling hurt inside. We may act peaceful while holding anger. We may try to be spiritual while avoiding real honesty. The goal is not to pretend the shadow is not there. The goal is to understand it. As I have written as Sakshi, the spiritual problem is not only that something has been buried, but that we often do not know who is watching the burial. One tradition asks what has been hidden. The yogic path asks who is witnessing the hiding. When these two questions are held together, shadow work becomes more than self-improvement. It becomes a doorway into witness consciousness, the steady awareness that observes the movements of mind without becoming trapped inside them. The first step is to notice what is happening inside you. Notice anger. Notice jealousy. Notice the need to control. Notice the need to be seen or loved. Do not judge it right away. Do not obey it blindly either. Just pause and ask, what is this feeling trying to show me? This is why I return again and again to Sakshi, the witnessing consciousness or inner observer. To notice anger without instantly becoming anger is already a movement toward freedom. To notice fear without obeying fear is already the beginning of mastery. The witness does not deny the shadow, it gives us enough inner distance to see the shadow clearly. Integration, bringing hidden material into conscious relationship, does not mean acting out every feeling. It does not mean hurting others because you are angry. It does not mean following every desire. In Jung's view, integration means bringing hidden parts of the self into awareness so they no longer control us from the unconscious. You see the feeling, understand it, and choose a better response. Suppression says, I must not be this. Integration says, I need to understand this. Suppression hides the feeling. Integration listens to it. Suppression creates division inside us. Integration helps us become more honest and whole. In my comparative teaching, Freud, Jung, and Yoga each enter a different chamber of the human being. Freud searches for the buried conflict. Jung listens to the symbol and the soul's movement toward wholeness. Yoga turns attention toward the seer. When these are brought into conversation, the work moves from psychological excavation to symbolic integration to disciplined awareness. Jung called the larger journey individuation the lifelong movement toward psychological wholeness. Individuation is the process of becoming more whole. It is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming more honest. The ego, the conscious sense of I, the persona, the shadow, and the deeper self begin to come into a better relationship. A person starts to live less from performance and more from truth. This is the work, to stop rejecting parts of yourself and start understanding them. The wounded part, the angry part, the fearful part, the loving part, and the wise part all need to be seen clearly. Wholeness does not come from cutting pieces of yourself away. It comes from bringing those pieces into awareness and learning how to live with them in a healthy way. This is why shadow work is not just negative work. Jung believed the shadow can also contain gifts. A person may have buried confidence, creativity, strength, tenderness, or courage because those qualities were once criticized or unsafe to express. Integration allows those lost energies to return in a mature and healthy way. The shadow, then, is not merely a trash pile of unwanted material. It can also be a hidden treasury. In the language I have used elsewhere, the psyche is not dead storage, it is a living field. What has been rejected may return as symptom, but it may also return as strength, creativity, discernment, and compassion when it is brought into conscious relationship. 3 phases of shadow work. Phase 1. creating the shadow's inventory. The first phase of shadow work is to make an honest inventory. This means paying attention to the parts of yourself you usually avoid, deny, or hide. Jung taught that the shadow is made of what the conscious personality refuses to accept. So the inventory begins with one basic question: what do I not want to see in myself? This inventory is similar to Arjuna standing on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna, the divine guide and teacher, reveals wisdom in the middle of crisis. The battlefield is not only outside us. It is also inside us, where duty, fear, love, shame, memory, attachment, and conscience collide. In my Gita writings, I have treated Arjuna's crisis as both spiritual and psychological because real transformation often begins when the old way of seeing collapses. This inventory is not about blaming yourself. It is about becoming more aware. You look for repeated patterns, strong reactions, jealousy, resentment, fear, shame, control, people you judge too quickly, and situations that keep making you feel powerless. These are clues. They show where the shadow may be active. One helpful way to begin is to write down what triggers you. Ask yourself, who bothers me the most and why? What do I criticize in others? What emotions do I try not to feel? What do I secretly want but feel ashamed to admit? What strengths have I hidden because I was afraid of being judged? This is how the shadow's contents begin to come into view. Jung's idea of projection is important here. Projection means we may see in others what we have not accepted in ourselves. If someone's confidence irritates us, maybe our own confidence has been buried. If someone's anger scares us, maybe our own anger has never been handled in a healthy way. The inventory helps us take back what we have been projecting onto the world. Phase 2, taking control and emptying the shadow's wastebasket. After the inventory comes the work of taking control. The shadow's wastebasket is the place where old pain, shame, fear, anger, false beliefs, and rejected parts of the self have been thrown. These things do not disappear just because they were pushed away. They remain active beneath the surface and can shape behavior without our awareness. Emptying the wastebasket means bringing these hidden contents into the light one by one. You name the feeling. You admit the wound. You question the belief. You stop saying, "That is not me," and begin saying, "This is something in me that needs understanding." This does not mean you excuse harmful behavior. It means you stop letting unconscious material control you. Taking control also means learning the difference between feeling something and acting it out. You may feel anger, but you do not have to become cruel. You may feel fear, but you do not have to run from every challenge. You may feel jealousy, but you can use it to understand what you value or desire. In this phase, you turn reaction into responsibility. Yoga names this inner training through the refinement of manas, the sensory and coordinating mind, buddhi, discriminative intelligence, ahamkara, the I-maker that claims experience as self, and siddha, the deeper field of mind, memory, and impression. Shadow work becomes yogic when buddhi begins to see clearly and ahamkara no longer claims every passing emotion as the whole self. This is where the ego becomes stronger in a healthy way. The ego is not destroyed, it learns to relate to the unconscious, the hidden layer of mind outside ordinary awareness, instead of being ruled by it. You begin to pause before reacting. You begin to notice patterns before they repeat. You begin to choose instead of simply being driven. This is the beginning of real inner authority. The old impressions, or samskaras, subtle grooves left by experience, and vasanas, latent tendencies that move behavior before conscious choice, are part of what keeps the shadow active. They are not destroyed by denial. They are weakened by awareness, discipline, right action, and repeated return to the witness. Phase 3, awakening and a new way of dealing with life. After the inventory and the emptying, something begins to change. The person is not perfect, but they are more awake. They are less controlled by hidden fear, shame, anger, and old wounds. They can see themselves more clearly. They can also see other people more clearly, because they are no longer projecting as much of their own shadow onto them. This awakening brings a new way of dealing with life. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the person begins to ask, "What is this showing me?" Instead of reacting immediately, they pause. Instead of blaming everyone else, they look for their part. Instead of hiding from pain, they learn from it. Life becomes less about defense and more about awareness. This is also the practical meaning of Dharma, right order, duty, and sustaining truth. When the shadow rules, action is driven by fear, craving, or old injury. When awareness grows, action becomes more aligned. One does not merely react from the wound, one responds from a clearer center. In Jung's language, this is part of individuation. The person becomes more whole. The persona is no longer the master. The shadow is no longer the hidden ruler. The ego becomes a conscious servant of a deeper self. The person begins to live with more honesty, balance, and strength. The new way of life is simple but powerful. Feel without being controlled by the feeling. See without denying what is seen. Act without being driven by old wounds. And relate to others without making them carry what belongs to you. This is integration in daily life. It is not an idea. It is a practice. So do not be afraid to look within. Meeting the shadow is not failure. It is part of growth. When you stop running from what is inside you, you begin to understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, you can begin to heal, change, and live with greater peace. Awakening in yogic maturity, a comparison with moksha. The awakening that comes after shadow work and the yogic idea of moksha, liberation from spiritual bondage, point in a similar direction, freedom. But they speak from different traditions. Jung's language is psychological. Yoga's language is spiritual. Jung speaks of becoming whole. Yoga speaks of becoming free. In Jungian awakening, a person becomes less controlled by the unconscious. They stop projecting so much onto others. They see their wounds, patterns, fears, and desires more clearly. They begin to live with more honesty and responsibility. This is psychological maturity. The person is no longer ruled by the shadow in the same way. In the teachings I have written under Exum/Sakshi, this is the movement from unconscious repetition to conscious participation. The human being stops rolling the same inner boulder up the same hill in the same old way. A new path opens, not because life becomes free of burden, but because consciousness is no longer merely enslaved to the old loop. Moksha goes even further. In yogic understanding, moksha means liberation from bondage. This bondage is deeper than personal fear or childhood wounds. It is the bondage of ignorance, mistaking the temporary for the true ego identification with the limited personal self-attachment, and the mistaken belief that we are only the body, mind, personality, or story. Moksha is the realization of the true self, the deeper spiritual identity beyond changing roles, beyond these temporary identities. Here the Upanishadic vision becomes important. Atman, the innermost self or witnessing principle, is not simply another mood, identity, or role inside the personality. It is the light by which the movements of personality are known. When I write that Atman and human consciousness are intimately related, I am pointing toward this mystery. The one who watches thought is not the same as the thought watched. So we can say that shadow work helps clean and integrate the personal self, the everyday personality shaped by memory and experience, while Moksha points to freedom from false identification with the personal self altogether. Shadow work asks, what parts of me have I rejected? Moksha asks, who am I beyond all parts? Both questions are important. One makes the personality more whole. The other reveals that our deepest nature is not limited to personality. The awakening after shadow work may bring better relationships, less reactivity, more compassion, and clearer choices. Yogic maturity, steady wisdom expressed in daily life, brings detachment, freedom from clinging without becoming indifferent, inner peace, self-knowledge, and freedom from being controlled by craving and fear. The mature yogi is not numb or disconnected. The mature yogi is awake, steady, and inwardly free. In practical life, this means the awakened person no longer uses spirituality to hide from the shadow. They do not pretend to be beyond anger, fear, desire, or pain. They see these movements clearly and respond with awareness. This is where Jungian integration and yogic maturity can support each other. The shadow is faced, the ego is softened, and the deeper self, the spiritual ground beneath the ordinary personality, becomes more visible. This is the bridge I want you, as the reader, to see. Jung helps us recover the rejected parts of the psyche. Yoga helps us stop mistaking the psyche for the whole of who we are. Sakshi, as witness, stands at that crossing point. It allows the seeker to face the shadow without becoming lost in it and to move toward the self without using spirituality as a mask. Moksha, then, is not simply feeling better. It is not just becoming emotionally balanced. It is liberation from the inner chains that keep consciousness identified with fear, attachment, and ego. Shadow work can prepare the ground for this because it makes the seeker honest. A person who cannot face their own shadow will often turn spirituality into another mask. But a person who has faced the shadow can approach freedom with greater humility and maturity. In simple terms, Jungian awakening says, I am learning to know and integrate myself. Moksha says, I am awakening to the self beyond the small self. The first brings wholeness to the human personality. The second brings liberation from bondage. Together, they describe a powerful movement, from suppression to integration, from integration to awakening, and from awakening to freedom. Therefore, the path is not escape from the human condition, but a fuller awakening within it. The shadow must be seen. The ego must be educated. The witness must be strengthened. The self must be remembered. This is the movement I have tried to express through my essays, discourses, and teachings, from hidden pain to honest awareness, from awareness to integration, from integration to witnessing, and from witnessing to liberation.
And there ends my most recent, not last, hopefully I've got a few left in there, a few plans for the future and a few discourses to be edited and recorded and then launched on YouTube. But there ends the present discourse I just recorded for you. Again, the title of that one was The Shadow. And I hope you have a better understanding of what is meant by that phrase, the shadow. If not, you can go to Wikipedia or any of the great resources and research friendly areas of the internet and see what Dr. Jung, who he was, what he accomplished, and who his teacher was, and the books he wrote, and his life's biography, and so forth. I find him to be a fascinating person in the history of psychology. Of course, he basically was one of the founders of psychology. So look that up if you please. Also, share this video and my other ones if you have a moment, a chance, with friends and family, or even coworkers, whomever you find that might be interested in their context and in my work in general. So I'll close as I always do by saying good evening to you, and be good to yourself, be good to others, and be good to strangers. And remember, no matter what is happening in the world that seems bothersome to you at this moment in time, as the old saying goes, this too shall pass. Good night to you, and thank you for coming by. Goodbye.